All right, guys, how are we doing today? Welcome back to another episode of the Robbie Basel Show. Today is the video for Friday, February 23rd. Hope everyone's day is going very well, and hope everyone's going to be excited for another weekend here. I think one of the last ones, or the last one of February already, which is absolutely ridiculous. Time is flying. That's all I'm going to say on that. Just a couple quick notes. Today's video is the NFC season recap in the NFL. I'll also give like an update on like how actually no, we already talked about awards. We don't need to do that again. So we're gonna do the NFC season recap. We'll go through each team just like the AFC one. I know the AFC one may have been a little bit more scuffed because I never done a video series or two parts like this before. So any recommendations from the comments would be appreciated. Also, I forgot to mention this because I forgot how many videos we were on. Thank you guys. We have eclipsed the 75 episode echelon threshold. I don't know. One of the two words. People have been following from day one. We started this channel. Well, I started this channel talking about a lot of different topics in sports in May of last year, and we're closing in on getting to episode 100, which I will try and get like confetti and stuff to put in my room, which might get me in trouble, but we will try it anyway. Might as well try experiment a little bit, have some fun for episode 100. But make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Of course, good amount of likes, and I'll do a commentary of your guys' choosing. If you remember, we did the one on the Jets a couple of weeks ago. And you know what? I'll just once again lay out what's going on this week. So today's episode, NFC season recap. We already knew that. Tuesday, I'm gonna go over the Champions League a little bit, the Premier League, what's going on there. Friday of next week, gonna be one of my favorite videos this year, F1 season preview with Bahrain on Saturday. I'm excited, and I mean, I'm gonna try and record the video the day before qualifying, so I'd have no like bias at all or like favoritism like I did because the NFL video, I did get a comment or two saying like you recorded it after week one, like your opinions could have changed a little bit, and to be fair, one of them did. One of my opinions did change, and I lost faith in the Baltimore Ravens, which I shouldn't have. Before the season, I still didn't have enough faith in the Ravens, which I had too much faith in the Jets. It was a very weird situation. But today, let's go to the video what we're going to be doing. So, episode, I think this is number 76. I honestly have lost count. Our NFC season previous. We're going to go team by team, division by division. Let's get right into it. Once again, make sure to hit the like button down below. And today, actually, we have a sponsor. No, we don't. Gotcha. We do not have a sponsor. I want it. If you have anyone like you'd want me to collab with as a sponsor, write it down in the comments. Actually, 10 likes equals one bit of hope that this light above me will actually get fixed soon. So, the work order was in for that, but we'll see what happens. When it eventually will happen, when it will hopefully be fixed soon. Without further ado, let's begin this video. And today, guys, we will be starting it off with the Washington Commanders, who are first on my list. Washington Commanders, who finished bottom of the NFC East, have a lot of questions in their off season to begin with. But let's go through what they did in the season. They had a very rough stretch. They started the season off 2-0, very respectable. They beat the Cardinals. They beat the Broncos. We didn't know what the Broncos were going to look like. Then they got thrashed by the Bills. They blew it to the Eagles. They lost to Chicago. They've lost some really bad games. The Giants. They struggled a little bit with the Patriots. The theme with this team was they can hold it a little bit with some of these bigger teams, particularly the Philadelphia Eagles. They've lost by one score in both games against the Philadelphia Eagles. They also only lost by 3 to Seattle, which isn't bad, but they've gotten thrashed by Miami, Dallas, so they're nowhere near contention. They also came back and blew it against the New York Jets on Christmas Eve, which was interesting in itself. Then they lost to San Francisco and Dallas to end the year. The questions with this team are very simple. Who's your quarterback? I want to find this statistic because the Washington Commanders at quarterback, Sam Howell actually didn't have let me put it this way. Sam Howell's season, he threw for a lot of yards. He turned it over a lot. And I don't know who to blame for that. But Washington, I mean, Sam Howell just threw for just south of 4,000 yards with that offense. And you would not think about it, but Terry McLaurin, who had an underperforming season, still had over 1,000 yards. I think I just don't know what they do. If you look at mock drafts recently, all of them are going to be pointing to Washington probably getting Drake May. Hold on a second, guys. I just want to make sure of something here. I just realized that the combine's next week. I thought it was 2 weeks, but it's next week. So very soon, I guess, will be mock draft time, but I will be paying attention to the combine. I completely forgot about the combine. My mistake, guys. But what do I like about this team? I like the potential that Brian Robinson has. It's just his offensive line was horrible. Remember, they did trade a couple of key pieces, primarily Montez Sweat, who was traded to the Bears. They traded Chase Young to the Niners when they knew they weren't going to re-sign him. So they have to figure out. I don't know what they do because they're in a very weird spot. You have to imagine they're drafting a quarterback. I think they have to be players for possibly offensive line and free agency. The issue is I don't know if any of the big-time offensive lineman prospects would even want to play in Washington for how much of a mess that team is in to begin with. I mean, they're a weird team, and I just don't like the situation Washington's in. I mean, if you look at the better offensive linemen, you're looking. I think they would be the ones to sign like Dwayne Brown, just as a filler. But if there's anyone I could think of they can maybe target, I mean, I think they have to re-sign Cornelius Lucas. I'm having a feeling that they could target like George Fant from Houston just as a filler, as a placeholder. Isaiah Wynn, maybe. I don't know. There's like a lot of interesting pieces. I have a really weird feeling that they're going to steal a lot of Houston players. I have to imagine that. But they're in a weird spot. They're going to be, I feel, very directionless because they just got a new head coach. All right, they're probably going to be getting a new quarterback. What direction are they going to go? I still think they're going to be bottom of the division next year, but barring one team's offseason not going to complete garbage off the jump. But Washington's in a weird spot. That's probably going to be the end of Sam Howell, which I feel like is kind of harsh. I still think he's a lot of potential. He's never going to accomplish it there in Washington. But I bet there will be other teams in the league that could target for him, possibly in a trade. Our next team is the other team from New York, the New York Giants, and I think this team is going to be a complete disaster in the offseason. I don't have a lot of hope for them. And the reason I'm putting it like this is, one, I think they're going to lose Saquon Barkley. I think that's going to be off the jump. He's going to want to go to a contender. I think he's going to get the bag from someone. But I think Saquon Barkley will not be signed right away. So I think there will be teams in the conversation for him, but I think it'll be a while before he actually signs. The issue for the Giants this season was the quarterback play, of course. I mean, what else would it be at this point? I mean, you had Daniel Jones, who then got injured and wasn't very good. Then you went to Tyrod, and he almost beat the Bills. And then you went to DeVito, who was like a meme. But they didn't have a quarterback throw over 1,400 yards. That's problematic. And with the way the Giants are in this draft, I actually think that they could possibly, make a run or possibly make moves to move up to draft a quarterback. I think that's a very big possibility here. Right now, the Giants, who are sitting at the number 6 selection, are projected to take Malik Nabers. And I feel like that's a good fit for them. A wide receiver to fit with Jalen Hyatt, possibly be one of the star wide receivers in the future of this game. The issue is, who's throwing to him? Are you going to really trust Daniel Jones? I mean, to be fair, you can't get out of the contract yet. So I know what Giants fans want, to get out of the Daniel Jones contract and move on. I really think, this is going to be very ambitious here, so keep that in mind. I really think the Giants are going to be one of the weird ones that could be aggressive in the draft, but they try to make a move but won't. I mean, You would have to think they're going to have to go after another running back, possibly draft one, sign one, do whatever. Because I don't think that, like I said, I don't think they keep Saquon because I don't think they want to do a long-term deal with Saquon Barkley. On top of that, you're going to have to figure out some areas. The secondary, I did not like their secondary, other than Deontay Banks. I like Micah McFadden, extended him immediately. But there's like some other pieces on this, like other wide receivers. Are you going to make a move for another one? Are they going to try and move up? Because I feel like if they can go out there and maybe move up, maybe they target a Tyler Boyd. Like just as an example. Giants I don't think are close. They had a hope, but their hope's going to be dwindling away a little bit, if that makes sense. I think their defensive line needs to be revamped a little bit as well. They have a lot more needs than I thought they were going to, but I think the Giants, out of all of these teams, have the least amount of room to. I think I actually have this. Let me word that. Have the second least amount of room to screw this up. Because the next team, one of the teams we'll talk about in a minute, can't screw up. Like they just physically can't screw up at this point. Let's talk about that team next. Because the next team in the standings is the Philadelphia. Well, both of the. I mean, all these teams, if they screw up, they're done for it. But the Philadelphia Eagles, who had the collapse of a lifetime, went out there and had a great start to the season, but emulated their friends from the other side of the state in the Steelers from a couple years ago and just fully collapsed at the end of the season. Barely made it over the finish line, made the wild card, lost to Baker Mayfield, and now are in a very weird situation. Shout out to what the heck is their podcast name? The J&J Show. My God, where I predicted the Jets to beat the Philadelphia Eagles. It's not my clip of the year because my clip of the year was the one with Rome. Check out the Robbie Basel Show Instagram if you haven't seen it yet from the Starting Grid podcast, where that moment is probably a top 3 moment from last year on that show. But the Philadelphia Eagles, a lot of hype in the beginning of the year was going to be the additions to their defense, and you see why. But injuries really did hurt them, didn't they? But they still have a lot of good players. The problem for them is going to be, I believe Fletcher Cox is a free agent this year. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. It's hard to remember all of these players, I'll be honest with you here. But right now, if we look at let's go put them on the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's just check out the Philadelphia Eagles. The big free agents for them are going to be a couple of older players, but they also are going to be in the market for a running back because they might be losing DeAndre Swift, who I do think re-signs there actually if they give him the right value. On top of that, you've got like a Shaq Leonard, who I think could be pretty good. Nicholas Morrow, who I think is kind of underrated. They have one of the better punters in the game, who will be a free agent, but they're in a weird spot because they need to add more. They really need to add more, and I think that's going to be in the secondary. Because just think about it. If they get one of the better defensive players in the secondary, like this team will be ridiculous because their secondary looked like Swiss cheese. And a player for them who I could think of who will actually be getting less money is a guy like Eddie Jackson. Maybe you go out there, get a short-term rental on Micah Hyde. You go out there and try to make a play for a Jeff Okudah. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. The list goes on and on. I think Jordan Whitehead would be a great signing for them. Because even though he doesn't fit like the true build they would want, I think that'd be a really, really good get. If you want to keep scrolling down this list, there's a lot of other underrated players. Xavier McKinney, I think, would be a phenomenal sign. A guy who I forgot to mention for the Giants, who they have to re-sign. So the Eagles, they have options. Are they going to mess it up though? Because they really don't. With the way Dallas was at the end of last season, there's not much room for error. Speaking of Dallas, let's go to them next. The Dallas Cowboys, who went out and won the NFC East and got absolutely obliterated by the Green Bay Packers. My biggest thing for them would have been get a new head coach. What did they do? They did not get a new head coach. Also, speaking of the Eagles, they screwed it up by hiring. Screwed up's a harsh word, but they did not get the right coaches that would fit their team. I don't think so, at least. Kellen Moore has potential, but I mean, he's played Dallas, so he knows how to go up against Dallas. I mean, probably knows how to go up against Dallas's defense. But the Dallas Cowboys, very interesting group. I mean, you have Dak Prescott, solid season, 4,500 passing yards. Tony Pollard struggled, but still had over 1,000 yards. CeeDee Lamb, an elite receiver in the game. The problem was they didn't have a receiver get over, an actual wide receiver get over 650 yards after CeeDee Lamb. My thing for them would be to try to incorporate other receivers more, because more and more people are going to be focusing in on CeeDee Lamb if they didn't do it enough already. But you have to imagine they're going defense, right? If you look at their free agency list, which I haven't really looked at enough, and I probably should have. You know, I say this stuff, yeah. I just forget to, because college, like, it makes you, like, at the study, I'm not making excuses. Screw excuses today, chat. Dallas, free agents. What do we got? The Dallas Cowboys, their biggest free agent will probably be, oh, I forgot he's a free agent. The aforementioned Tony Pollard. This is a running back free agency here. And I did not realize it's all running backs. There's not a lot of major names. I mean, Stephon Gilmore, short-term deal maybe, 1-year contract. Dante Fowler, 1-year contract. Noah Igbenogany, who I didn't even know they traded for, is here. Jonathan Hankins, I know, is pretty okay. But Dallas isn't in the greatest situation, but I think they just need to add just depth pieces. Probably, I mean, you have CeeDee Lamb. Are they going to add someone besides him? Because you have a player like a Michael Gallup, a Brandon Cooks, but I think they need to step up a little bit and get a real number 2 for CeeDee Lamb. Could that be a guy like a Tyler Boyd? I know I'm mentioning his name a lot, but I think that could possibly be in the works if they have the money for Tyler Boyd. I'm just trying to throw ideas out there. Probably add to the offensive line. I know that got killed in the playoffs in their loss. Maybe add another defensive tackle. I think they could probably do that in the draft. They have options. I also think if they can get a guy like a Kool-Aid McKinstry in the draft, I think would be perfect for them. Kool-Aid would be a great fit because he could, as a secondary fit, putting him with some of these other corners that they have would be amazing. Lockdown Dallas. Dallas would be on full lockdown for everyone else in the division because they would just cause problems. To our next division, we're gonna go south, just like in the video from on Tuesday, and we are going to head to our friends all the way at the bottom. This is gonna load. Well, we will be starting us off with the Carolina Panthers, who have nowhere to go but up, but trying to go up for them is going to be a mountain to climb to begin with. They signed Adam Thielen. They traded what was now the first pick in this year's draft to draft a guy that has a very high ceiling, but probably now an even lower floor than we could have ever imagined for him. They did not win a road game. They had one of the worst points allowed in the league. They allowed over 400 points. The only teams that allowed more points than them were the Cardinals. Listen, their defense, they had some elite weapons on their elite pieces on their defense. You have guys like Brian Burns. I'm totally forgetting some of these. They had a defensive tackle, Derek Brown. There you go. See, I do know a ball here, chat. But chat, I don't stream. I keep realizing that. But back to Carolina. You have free agents who you're going to lose. You're talking about guys like Frankie Louvu, C.J. Henderson, Brian Burns, who is a free agent. You should have tried to re-sign. I think they're actually going to tag him. I think he's probably going to be the franchise tag. But your probable targets are re-signing Jeremy Chin, who I think will be a big-time get for anyone in this free agency class. Probably be one of the more underrated signings. Louvu, another good get. I want the Jets to get him. DJ Chark, who I think is a very competent receiver. And back to C.J. Henderson, who I think will be a very sought-out cornerback prospect, who I think would actually fit very well with the Kansas City Chiefs. Just saying. But I think CJ Henderson in like a Niners jersey would be very fun. Just saying. I'm just saying. Okay. But this team has nowhere to go but up, but they has had a bad season everywhere. They need everything. They don't have a first round pick. I expect them to not trade into the first round. I expect them to get like a lot of mid players. Kind of how they think the Texans did it years ago, where they just kept signing mid players just to fill out a roster. That's probably going to be the way that the Carolina Panthers go about this. To my team in third, and one of the most disappointing teams in the NFC this year, the Atlanta Falcons. Now, they did do what they needed to do, and that was get rid of Arthur Smith. They added, I think their coach is going to be Raheem Morris. Now, I kind of like the get. The issue for them was that their road record was 2-7. That's one of the big problems. The other one is going to be, look at this mock draft. I don't know what the Falcons would do in the draft. They have options. They really do. Falcons are projected to take Dallas Turner, an edge from Alabama. I think that's actually a really good get. I think Byron Murphy would be a better scheme fit, just creating chaos. But one thing I do know, is that the Falcons drafting recently has made 0 sense. I mean, last year they took Bijan Robinson. Did it make sense at the time? Absolutely not. Was he good? He was solid. I felt like he was solid, but they just have to go defensive front. They do not have a choice. But yeah, they have a lot of room to grow. They have to figure out who their quarterback's going to be. Is it going to be Desmond Ridder? Are they going to draft someone in the second round like a Bo Nix? Well, I actually think that's very possible at this point, but once again, we'll have to wait and see. Can they move? I mean, they might have a chance to draft J.J. McCarthy. Would they go out and draft him, even though I think that's a very high reach, a very big reach, excuse me, for a guy who's just a game manager? I think that'd be a very pointless move. That being said, that's such a Falcons pick. But just like, you know what, we don't need this position that much. Let's draft it anyway. Like last year, yeah, we have Tyler Algier and Cordell Patterson. Let's add another one in the first round. Jeez. The Falcons they should have been way better than what they were, but Arthur Smith, I think, was really holding them back. It's going to be the big thing for them is how their offense going to look with the guy not holding back some of the key weapons in the team, like Drake London and Kyle Pitts. Next season is going to be where Kyle Pitts really steps up. I'm calling it now. Next up, we have New Orleans. They went out and lost the division, I think, on tiebreaker. They did. They went 9-8. They won the last two down the stretch. The issue for them was the inconsistency with Derek Carr, which is harsh but fair. Because Derek Carr did not play like his price tag. And that's a very popular thing with a couple of these quarterbacks who got new contracts. I'm talking guys like Daniel Jones, who did have an injury, to be fair. But he didn't look very good this season. Justin Herbert, I feel like, even though because of how bad his record was, I think you could make that argument for him as well. But if you look at the numbers for New Orleans, who stepped up for them this year? Because I don't even know. I mean, Derek Carr threw for 3,800 yards despite being really disappointing. Of course, they have Chris Olave. I almost forgot. Their run game was so invisible. To be fair, Alvin Kamara only played 13 games, but averaged 3.9 yards a carry. That's concerning. Their second leading rusher was Taysom Hill, and then it was Jamal Williams. This team, I have a feeling, is projected to take an offensive lineman. I need to do more research on the mock draft because I have not looked into this enough yet. They're projected to take Bo Nix, who I didn't realize was this high. Bo Nix for them, I don't think is the right move. That's a year or two late from New Orleans because if Bo Nix goes this high, which I don't think he will, I didn't realize that he was even in the first round of this mock draft to begin with. It's such a weird move that New Orleans doesn't need to make because Derek Carr still threw for 3,800 yards. The Giants aren't projected to take a quarterback. I'm projected to stay with Daniel Jones, a guy who only threw for 1,000 yards. They didn't have a quarterback to over 1,400. Like, Why? It's such a confusing move. We get to talk about this team a little bit later on, but the Saints, Dan Jeremiah says it's a good get for the Saints. That's not the biggest need for them. I think they have to reassure the offensive line. I think they need to go out and possibly grab some other weapons on the defense. Derek Carr, what you could argue was the main problem, but I don't think it really was. It's just underperformance, particularly in some of the other areas in the team. I mean, you have a great receiver for the future in Chris Olave. You have one of the most underrated receivers in the game in Rashid Shaheed. Michael Thomas, when healthy, was pretty competent. He had 11.5 yards per reception, by the way. Keep him healthy, and this team will be a contender for next season to probably be the one that I would pick next year to win the NFC South if they find a way to not send Michael Thomas to the hospital off the jump. They're a weird one. They have former Jet legend Demario Davis, who played for the Jets multiple times. Derek Carr threw under 10 interceptions, and they need to keep him healthy. They need to keep him healthy next year. They need to protect him. This team can be good. I just don't know. They're a very weird one. There are a lot of weird teams in this division. And we're going to continue that theme with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who I think are going to be the ones to massively regress next year. Next year, I think they lose Mike Evans. Next season, I don't think they have Baker Mayfield. They're going to be the ones, I think, to draft. Really think about it. A guy who I think is really going to fall. Tampa Bay, who's projected at 26. Granted, Ennis Rakestraw is projected to them, is really good. I watched his film. He's out of Missouri, physical. He fits the bill perfect. Who's their quarterback going to be? Do you really trust that they're going to re-sign Baker Mayfield? Do you have that belief? They went 9-8, barely. I really think Baker Mayfield will be on a better team next year. He should go to Minnesota, replace Cousins. I'm serious. Minnesota, Baker Mayfield, just saying. I think it'll be a really fun get. Just pointing that out there. But Tampa Bay, I don't think it's right to make. I mean, right now they're making the mock drafts if they have Baker Mayfield next year. This has to be a quarterback or a receiver to me. But I don't think there's going to be a receiver that's good enough to be in this area of the draft. Not what I'm seeing, at least. I mean, maybe you hope Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU is projected to go to the Dolphins for some reason. Have him fall, which would be a pretty good pickup from Tampa Bay. But right now, Tampa Bay just needs to reassure themselves so that they can find ways to re-sign Mike Evans, try and re-sign Baker, and then go from there. But I think you either sign one or none. I don't know who it is. It's a very weird situation that I know Tampa Bay doesn't want to be in because they signed Baker Mayfield thinking, yeah, he's going to get us be okay. He's not going to want a big payday next year. He's I think north of $30 million next season. A multi-year deal for over $30 million. That seems what I think. I think that's a very big possibility. Good possibility now. 3 years, 90. I mean, what's? No, actually, never mind. I think I think he could get the Geno Smith contract. Maybe the equivalent of that. Who knows? But they need to re-sign people, or they're screwed. Because they might not have a quarterback before the draft this season. To our friends up north in the NFC North. Take a look at the standings. Our first team to talk about is the Bears, who are a disaster. Traded for Montez Sweat. They traded for DJ Moore. They got DJ Moore in that trade for the first. Now what looks like what is the first pick. They are doing Justin Fields really dirty. I feel bad for Justin Fields. I never thought I'd say that. I feel bad for Justin Fields. He is being sent to the equivalent of an exile, which just do it already. I don't know what they're waiting for. I mean, of course, you probably have to wait till March to do this move, but I haven't seen a team treat a quarterback this bad other than Zach Wilson and the Jets fan base. Like, I haven't seen anything that bad. But the issue for the Bears wasn't really Fields itself. It's the terrible offensive line that will kill Caleb Williams if they draft him, which will hurt him, both quarterbacks, over time. Now, with where Fields could be projected to be traded to, also won't help him. But this team, you have the first and the 9th pick. This has to be quarterback. This has to be offensive tackle. No in between. Zero in between. Daniel Jeremiah, what does he have him doing? Edge, that kind of works too. I mean, you lost. I think Talise Fuaga, it would just make so much sense for the Jets pick to be robbed right before them. I mean, drafting an offensive tackle, you don't want Caleb to die. I mean, this has to be a move from Chicago, drafting offensive line. Has to. They drafted one last year, but why not get another one to be on the opposite side of the line? Granted, this Jared Verse guy, look, I know is good. He's out of Florida State. He'd really complement Montez Sweat. They need to protect Caleb if they get him, which is probably going to happen. They need to protect him at all costs. That has to be an offensive tackle pick. Could it be? I think Joe Alt is a real option for them. That would be a really good pickup. Will their pick be a guy like Olamuya Fashanu from Penn State? Also a possibility. But with the way this is updated and the way this mock draft is changed over a couple of days, this is it's a weird situation to be in if you're Chicago, because you have 2 first-round picks. I really think they could be really aggressive in this draft because they kind of have to, because Green Bay is going to be really good next year. Detroit's going to be good. Does Chicago not want to be in the dance party for a playoff spot next year? They have some good weapons on defense. They did cut Eddie Jackson. Thought that was kind of sad, but he was really underperforming there. They are going to need secondary help too. Could they be the ones to trade up back into the first round and get a guy like Kool-Aid McKinstry? That's a very good possibility, I think, as well. Bears are a mess. They have to go be really competitive this season. They have to be competitive. Have to. I think it starts with drafting Caleb. I think that you can get a guy like Joel Alt at 9. I think it's very possible. If they land those 2, trade back into the first round, get Kool-Aid McKinstry, that'd be the greatest, a phenomenal draft by Chicago. Next up, we have another disappointing team who I had a lot of confidence in this year, the Minnesota Vikings. They need a new quarterback. They need a lot of things. A new of a lot of things. And what they're currently projected to take in the draft, they are currently projected to take Byron Murphy, which I think is actually a really good selection. They need probably some secondary. They need help in every position, I feel like, other than receiver, because receiver is locked down. You have Jordan Addison, you have Jay Jettas, you're fine there. I think they might draft a running back. Heck, I think they could draft one of every position and it still wouldn't be enough for them. But I do think that Minnesota has to address the quarterback need in free agency. They have to get rid of Cousins. They cannot re-sign him again. This should be Baker Mayfield. Should be Baker Mayfield. Guy who had a great season last year with some good weapons. Why not have a good caliber weapons? But just wait. But younger and faster. Adding KJ Osborne. Another good receiver. For once, this team didn't mess up drafting a receiver. We all know the Laquan, the Treadwells, and some of the other bad receivers that they've drafted before. The stereotype is gone, and what they have at the receiving game, and how their team is still not good enough, is criminal. But I think they turn it around, and if they get Baker Mayfield, it would be the perfect get, because Kirk Cousins got hurt. I think he's done with Minnesota. You had Josh Dobbs. You traded for Josh Dobbs. He came in and played great for one game. Played great again and then fell off. You had a couple other players play quarterback as well. Jaron Hall, I know, was one of them. they need a true answer at quarterback. I don't think it's Dobbs. I don't think it's Hall. I don't think it's Cousins. I think Baker Mayfield will be a perfect fit for them. And I don't think he's going to cost as much money. But getting him and Byron Murphy at the second, I think would be two great plays, moves by Minnesota. They need to add some depth, I think, in the secondary. I think there'll be a couple. I think Jordan Whitehead actually would be even better fit in Minnesota because you play in a dome. Why wouldn't you want to play in a dome? Just saying, it sounds like really cool situation. But, there's some other needs that they could have as well, but they're going to need to make moves as well because a team I had not a lot of faith in but still had to make it to the playoffs is our next team, the Green Bay Packers, who had probably one of the shockers of the season. Like, we know the story. Jordan Love comes in and gets them to 9-8 and making the playoffs, which is phenomenal work by Green Bay. I didn't have a lot of faith in them in the beginning of the year. I didn't. I still had them making the 7th seed barely, and that's what they did. But then they made a really big statement, went on the road and beat Dallas. They need a real one receiver. Please sign a receiver. It's not that. Is it that difficult? I'm actually not even sure anymore. Because honestly, they didn't do it Rodgers. Please sign T. Higgins. Please sign Mike Evans. Please sign someone that will elevate the level of your team. Or they're going nowhere. That's simple. I want them to be good again. They have the potential to be a star team. They do. How do you expect to do that if you don't have a real number one receiver? Christian Watson, looking like a flop now, but still has a lot of potential. Romeo Doubs, cool guy. I'm missing some other weapons from them, what they were able to use a wide receiver this year. Imagine they had a real number one receiver. This team could be a conference championship contender, ladies and gentlemen. I'm dead serious. Look who they have a receiver. Jaden Reed. That's the other one I was forgetting. Imagine they have a receiver better than Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, and Christian Watson combined. Get a guy like Mike Evans. Short-term deal Mike Evans. Simple. They have to make a move for a wide receiver and an offensive tackle because I think Bakhtiari, I have a feeling, that he will be done in Green Bay. His contract is horrible. Find another place for him. I think they need help to possibly get someone to go besides Jair Alexander. If they can find an elite another corner, that would be amazing. This team needs a receiver or they are done for. Simple. Next team. The Detroit Lions, who way outperformed my expectations for them. They are a weird bunch. And this is really one of those moments where I actually finally head to over the cap. Because I really haven't touched over the cap today. Because I didn't really think I would need to with the NFC. Because the NFC was so much worse than the AFC this year. Everyone can agree with me on that. Oh, by the way, just a reminder about Washington. They have the most cap space. The Bears have cap space too, so they both need to be big players. The Lions have $50 million in cap space. 50 cap space. They need to do something or they're not going to be back to where they were. Let's click on the Detroit Lions, who will be one of our few teams that we actually like a contract for. Players I would re-sign. I think they have to re-sign Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. That's my first move. With the projected contract for him, give him that money. Is there another player I'd want to re-sign here immediately? There's really not. Nate Sudfeld, I didn't even realize he was there. Graham Glasgow, maybe. I think they could still be players. I think they might have to extend Goff now. Like, say they give him new contract, say $30 million base salary, which would turn into a $40 million cap. You're looking at, with a couple of restructures, you're looking at $50 million in cap space still. I think you re-sign Josh Reynolds, who's a good fit for you last season. Sign him off, I think $4 million a year. Re-sign him that. Jonah Jackson, I think was pretty good, is really good. I think you have to re-sign him. But the way the money could go, they are going to have to. I mean, some of these players are retiring. Manuel Mosley, I think they could re-sign him too. So there, I think, would be around 30-something million in cap space. I don't even know what they do. They just need to add a superstar somewhere to take the next step. Imagine they get L'Jarius Sneed. I didn't say it. L'Jarius Sneed, Detroit Lions. Let's see what they're projected to draft according to Daniel Jeremiah. Let's just take a look, chat. Let's just take a look. Detroit. They're projected to take Nate Wiggins. You sign L'Jarius Sneed. That's the goal. That's your golden ticket this year. Sign L'Jarius Sneed. If they get L'Jarius Sneed, that'd be ridiculous. It would be. Or draft Kool-Aid McKinstry. Or, think about it. Wait a minute, chat. Wait a minute. They do both of them. Mind-blowing here. Brian Branch and C.J. Gardner-Johnson at safety. Corners such as Kool-Aid McKinstry, L'Jarius Sneed, and I'm totally forgetting somebody else. I'm going to feel like a loser here. Who am I forgetting? Cam Sutton, maybe? Yeah, Cameron Sutton. There we go. You'd have one of I think, the best secondaries in the game. Brian Branch, that's one of the safeties. Kirby Joseph, I know, was there. That team would be so good. Sign L'Jarius Sneed for $20 million a year and call it a day. Maybe sign depth in a couple other positions, call it a day. You're fine. If they don't sign an elite player, they're going to regress. I really feel like that's going to happen for them. To our final division of the day. Hope you guys are enjoying this shenanigans. To the NFC West we go, and the Cardinals. The Cardinals are, once again, another team in a very weird spot. They have a pick very low in the draft, 27th. They have one of the Texans picks. They're projected to take Cooper DeJean, which I think is a good pickup. Their other pick is projected to be Marvin Harrison. Now, this is a perfect pick for Arizona. This could be their new Larry Fitz. Scratch that. This will be their new Larry Fitz. But do you trust Kyler still? Do you trust his offensive line? I really think Arizona is going to move up from 27 and draft an interior offensive lineman like a Graham Barton, who's projected to go in this to Green Bay, which would actually make a little bit of sense, you know what I'm saying? But they need everything. They're not heading in the right direction. I think Jonathan Gannon has potential to be a good head coach, but I just don't know. A lot of unknowns for Arizona, and they just need to start building somewhere. And getting a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr. would be a phenomenal pickup. But they just had such a bad year last year. Let's look at Arizona Cardinals. We'll start doing this towards the back end of today's episode. Cap space for them this season. Once this Wi-Fi will load. Because the Wi-Fi here is slow. They have $40 million cap space. They need to get they're going to lose Marquise Brown, but replace him with Marvin Harrison. That's fine. I think you restructure Kyler. And if you do that, you restructure maybe DJ Humphries. You could set yourselves up for $78 million in cap room next year. 78. to add to this chaos, you're going to extend Buda Baker or attempt to do so for about, I think, 13, 14 million a year. But it's going to be still a good get. I don't think they re-sign Marquise Brown. They're probably going to re-sign one of the other player I'm forgetting about. But the Cardinals, I think, could be like Jacksonville were a couple of years ago, a team that weren't contending but and could splurge on a couple of players. I think they have a possibility to do that. I mean, why not pair Marvin Harrison with an experienced receiver like Tyler Boyd? Just throwing out his name out there again. Why not do that? Like, that'd be a great pickup for them. Do they do that? I don't think so. But Tyler Boyd here would be a phenomenal pickup. Tyler Boyd, wide receiver, just throwing it out there. Give him what I think he's going to get. They would still have about 60-something million in cap space. They can be players. If they do a couple of restructures, they could be real players. Kyler Murray the following season would make 53 and then 60-something million dollars. They can be real players here, chat. They really can. But Arizona, they have potential to sign people. Let's look at our next team. Finishing in third of the season, another team that disappointed was the Seattle Seahawks, who I had a lot of faith in this year. I did. They barely missed the playoffs. And Seattle, I did think they were going to be good enough to do some stuff this year. If they cut Geno, that wouldn't really save them money at all. With the way cap space is a myth, they have to re-sign, all right, Leonard Williams. If they do this, I think they extend Noah Fant, Jordan Brooks, Devin Bush. They're going to really have to find a way to get cap space from somebody. I think it's going to be this. I think they're going to cut Jamal Adams and then restructure people. I think this is the end of the time for Jamal Adams in Seattle. I really think so. But with a couple of restructures, listen, this team could actually be really good if they do a lot of restructuring. But they have to also re-sign some people. So I don't think they're going to do that much because they really don't have the money to do that much. But next year, they have the potential to sign some people, but at the end of the day, like, are they going to be able to keep up with LA and San Francisco? They're going to need to re-sign some people. They're currently projected to draft. Let us take a look. They're projected to take Troy Fautanu from Washington. I think that's a good pickup. I think that'd be a good fit to the offensive line. He could play guard. He also can play tackle. He could play everywhere other than center. Which is something that I think Seattle would benefit from. They need to figure out who their quarterback is, and they need to figure out probably offensive line. Drafting a guy like Troy Fautanu would be a good get for them. Next up, we have the Rams, who way outperformed my expectations this season. Way outperformed themselves. It's crazy what they were able to do. And they're projected to have money. And with a couple of restructures, I think they can have even more. Say they restructures Stafford and Donald, will have $66 million this offseason. Restructure Cup, they can have $78 million in cap space this year. I mean, do you dare? Next year, they would possibly lose Tutu Atwell. I think you make a move to possibly extend Tutu Atwell. Just throwing out the idea. Just do it off the jump. But I think you have to probably try and re-sign John Johnson They just need reinforcements. I think they need a better. I mean, they have a good running back in Williams or Kyron Williams. I think you have to try. And is Kyron a free agent next year? It's not like Kyron on here. I don't know what's going on. I think they might have. I don't know. I think it's bugging for Kyron, but I think they have good enough receivers. I think they need to probably add to the offensive line. They have a first-round pick this year, which I know, shocking, and they're projected to take an edge, Latu. I think Armarius Mims would be a better pick, but at the end of the day, the Rams adding anything, well, they'll probably be a superstar in like 2 years. I think corner would actually be very beneficial for them. If they go out and get a guy like an Ennis Rakestraw, looking up a little bit, if they get Quinion Mitchell from Toledo, good pickup. So, Terrion Arnold, if he falls, would be another great move. They are just in a weird spot. And the Rams, yeah, they outperformed expectations, but next year they have much higher expectations. Can they overcome those expectations, go out there and perform? That's a good question for the Rams next year. And finally, the Niners, who have so many questions. The Niners. Your NFC champion, Niners. First thing for them, restructure as many contracts as you can possibly do. The restructures I can think of off the jump, so the big contracts are restructured. They will have $30 million in cap space, but they have no money for 25 when they have to re-sign Brandon Ayuk. So, cap space being a myth, they're gonna re-sign. I think they're gonna try and go after re-signing Javon Kinlaw and Chase Young. Priority has to be Chase Young. If they lose Kinlaw, it sucks. I think they could possibly be in target though for an edge who can. Well, I think his market will drop after like the first couple of weeks. That edge is Bryce Huff, who had a season and a half the New York Jets. The money is projected, it's a lot, but I think they can make it work. The issue is soon extending Debo, which I have a feeling they're going to trade him, but it's just going to cause a lot of problems. That would cause a lot of problems. So they make these cuts that I'm thinking of. They would still only have $11 million in cap space. They have no money. They're going to try to make all these moves with no money. And they eventually have to pay Purdy. Like, this is going to be insanity really soon. Brock Purdy. Good dude. Isn't he a free agent like next year? Think so. I just can't find him anywhere. Like, Brock Purdy's a free agent in 2 years. You have to win in the window before you have to re-sign Purdy. You have to go back. Make a move or two. I think they can be players for really anyone because they won the NFC. They can be a player for really anybody. Question is, how aggressive is Shanahan and company going to be for a free agent? I think they kind of have to at this point, but in the end, let's wait and see. We'll see if San Francisco can try to make it back to the big game, but they have a long way a lot to climb because are they going to move Brandon Ayuk? Are they going to be able to restructure enough contracts? Are they going to be able to re-sign Chase Young? Lots to look out for with San Fran because they have no money. See how they can maneuver around this. That'll be the end of today's episode of the Robbie Basel Show. Thank you guys so much for watching today's episode of the NFC season recap and a little bit of a small preview. What to watch out for some of these teams in free agency in their off season. Just giving a little bit of preview of that as well. If you like what you saw, hit the like button down below. Subscribe to the channel. Tuesday goes back to our regular type of episodes. Friday is the F1 season preview. I can't wait. Let me know if you want to see a guest on here. If you want to, I'll try and make it work. On that note, I'm Robbie Basel saying so long, enjoy your weekend. I'll see you guys next week. Goodbye, everyone.